It's up to them. I will be for the second part. Maybe the first part, depending if they want me or not.
Nice. Yeah, I'll get them later.
Okay, we are on the record. Can everybody stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councillor Kane.
Here.
Councillor Fellows.
Here.
Councillor Keller.
Here.
Councillor LaRochelle.
Here.
Councillor Lunt.
Here.
Councillor Moore.
Here.
Councillor Robichaud.
Here. Next item.
First item is executive session, personnel matters per 1 MRSA 4056A.
I make a motion to go to an executive session.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Right. Order passed, vote 7-0. The time is 7:02. 6:02. You're right. So you used to say
We are going to be going into the training room for our executive session, so y'all can just hang out.
Joe Jean, put it behind your laptop. There you go.
Christ.
You know he loves that gavel.
He is going to break.
Ugly cries.
I've known Harry for over 40 years.
Did you say 40?
43, probably.
So when you picked on him in the playground, is that when he cried?
I'll come to attention when I walk in the room. You know that?
Well, we're going
Okay, we're live.
The salute.
Yeah, live.
And
Make a motion to
Back
come out
in
of
session.
executive session.
Back in session.
Second.
All in
second.
favor?
All right, it is. Order passed, 7-0, and that was Councillor Fellows. Thank you. The next item is good news and recognition. Can the chairman come forward to make this presentation for us? And Miss, yep, and. Okay.
Our target's not here. Good afternoon, Ross Cunningham with the Economic Community Development Director. I'd like to just announce that this coming Thursday we are having a ribbon cutting for some new artwork. Thanks to Public Works for putting that up today on the back of the library shed. There's 8 new panels of artwork that were painted by local students and local kids throughout the community. And tomorrow afternoon, if I can announce, there will be a mural mounted on the Union Street side of the UMaine Cooperative Building that'll go up tomorrow. So Thursday at 11:30 we'll have a ribbon cutting on Union Street to sort of recognize both of these new art installations here in town. So my thanks to all those who were involved in those. Thank you.
What date and time again?
That is the 16th, 17th at 11:30. 17th. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair. If you want to go down here, I'll hand it to you.
Okay.
The chairman of the council for the town of Lisbon is pleased to present this certificate of appreciation to Alex Rennell. Can you please come up? In appreciation of his support as an intern for the town of Lisbon, Alex's energetic, detailed, focused contributions were extremely valuable to multiple projects across all aspects of the town's operations, including human resources, economic development, management, and the clerk's office. Thank you for your efforts. We wish you well in all your future endeavors. And this is signed by the Lisbon Town Council. Pictures.
I'm always like photo bombing.
I know, exactly. That's what I'm Kristen, why is the back of your head all pricked up?
Let me just remove.
Thank you.
I'd also like to present Alex with a couple of things that were in this time here. One is a ball cap from Springworks, a great toy from Springworks, and of course a Moxie T-shirt.
I love
more
the
serious-
decorated bag, yes.
A Christmas bag. On a more serious note, he's been incredibly valuable to us this year for the 3 months he's been here. Every project we gave him came back done in half the time, so we had to find new things to give him. He was very productive and very insightful and helpful with his knowledge and his data research. So thank you.
He does not like to stuff envelopes.
I think it was a good endeavor for us to go through with the intern program, and obviously it paid off, so that's great.
The next item, I understand that the chair would like to move an item to earlier in the,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We still have good news and recognition?
oh,
Yeah, sure,
I would.
if you have some.
I have some. The other day I had what I'll call an interesting experience when I went to re-register my vehicle at the front desk. I wasn't first in line, but I was almost first, and I was greeted by Lori, when I walked in. She asked me to come up, and she didn't know who I was, but she ultimately figured out I was on the town council, and so she thanked me for being part of the government, and I thought that was nice. But while I was standing there, next to her was Amy Scribner, and our vehicle registrar, and she was dealing with a customer who was doing, of all things, not particularly happy about the new $52 sticker price for the dump sticker. And I just listened to see what the take would be as she ever so calmly explained that this was a logic, everything in price is going up, the dump fees and all those tipping fees and things like that. And she said, of course, the alternative would be much more expensive. You could do paper bag at $1.50 a bag. And after all, it's only $1 a week. And he looks at her and he says, I never thought of it that way. So that was a very good outcome. The next person was somewhat impatient over a vehicle that had some difficulties, couldn't be registered actively that day and had to go get somebody else's permission. I was impressed with the fact that she particularly handled it so very calmly. She never let any inflection of anything other than customer service get in her voice. And I noticed that both with Lori and with her, and although I didn't deal with Tina was up there working with other customers at the same time. So I'd like to do a shout out to the front desk for all their efforts, and it gave me a new appreciation of, we've always heard they have a tough time up there sometimes dealing with people who don't understand or who are upset. So I got to witness some of it, and I appreciate the way they tactfully handled everything.
Great. Thank you for your eloquent appreciation. Any other good news and recognition? Next item.
so I understand that we'll move an item, which is currently item 9D, which is other business, and it's the ROS1, ROS2 proposed zoning changes discussion. We can do that now if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Good evening.
Evening.
Nick Craig, I'm the Vice Chair of the Planning Board.
Yeah, and I'm Kate Birch from North Star Planning. I'm the town's contract planner. So basically, our purpose for being here tonight is to talk about how to move forward with some technical zoning changes that the Planning Board has been working through for the rural open space 1 and 2 zones. And my understanding is that these are fairly long-standing issues that have been brought from the council to the Planning Board. You've all been given a memo that describes the work the board has done over the past few months and some of the proposed changes. That's just for your reference for now. We're hoping to have a workshop in the future where we kind of go through all these changes and different ideas. But for now, we want to focus more on what the process going forward should be. So the Planning Board has come up with a series of technical changes with the goal of creating more consistency between zoning districts and maintaining the open space and working lands in Lisbon while providing more flexibility for property owners. But as with any zoning changes, there are impacts to these. We've tried to keep these impacts as limited as possible, but there will be, as is the nature of zoning, there will be impacts to what people can do with their property. So as we outlined in the memo, we have a couple options for how to move forward. We can continue to work through planning board, continue to refine the technical changes, go through public hearing, maybe have a workshop between planning board and council. Or we can sort of take a step back for now and open it up to a broader community conversation, maybe by having a public meeting in the next few months or a listening session for people who live in those areas or for any interested citizens. And the idea with maybe taking a step back and opening it up is not any sort of legal or technical reason why we need to do that, but more just to acknowledge some local circumstances and make sure that the process is as inclusive as possible. So Nick is here to share the board's perspective. If you have any questions about sort of why we've come here to you to talk about this, and I'm happy to answer questions as well. And like I said, we expect there will be a workshop at some point where we'll go through all these technical changes, but for now we wanted to sort of focus on how to move forward and what those next steps should be.
Kate. Yeah, and essentially, like she said, just from a board perspective, we've had a couple of citizens who have brought, items to our attention where they've either needed to subdivide or possibly put something in as a back lot and it's not allowed in that particular zone, or certain types of subdivisions that we're restricted to in those types of zones. We know that we have, housing shortages and trying to make it so that people can actually live here in Lisbon and yet still retain some of the rural feel of those particular zones. So we're just trying to address, some things that have come before us, from citizen concerns.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think the idea of some public outreach is actually really good, because in the past, some of the different situations that's happened up in that area, controversy tends to bring out a lot of people. And maybe through this process, everybody always seems to refer back to, that's really not what the comprehensive plan intended, but the comprehensive plan's changed over the years. Up in that area, at one point in time, the comprehensive plan was actually looked at possibly being somewhat commercial in that zone. And then it actually changed away from that to more rural. And I think you may even get some people coming in that may even have an interest of, if we're going to make a change, to actually do open it up for some commercial through that area. And that would change a whole lot of what we're looking at right now. So it'd be nice to see the goods and the bads and people's views, because there are limited people that live out that area, but yet it is a broad area. So
yeah. One of the things that's actually been brought up a couple of times is kind of, I think, related a bit to commercial, is farming, right? We have several farms that have stopped doing their commercial farming processes. And so those farm owners may want to be able to, do what Mr. Ricker did and split off a lot of his farmland into housing lots and be able to enjoy, not farming anymore and live off some of those profits. And so I think that that's something that we're trying to address here too, is that's currently really difficult in that zone if they have a lot of land to split it off into even large lots that they could subdivide on.
As well as rural compatible commercial uses is another way that you can think about preserving those rural landscapes, those open spaces, big lots, but allow people to have productive land, make a living off their land.
I think the consistency too of Route 9 in the sense, that it's really hard when you're actually at one community that has a set of guidelines, and then quarter mile of the road you get to the town line and it totally changes. So the idea of having some type of consistent layout of what our neighbors are doing too does impact a little bit. That's all.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I've been liaison to the committee for quite some time and have listened to all of the weekly workshops or bi-weekly workshops, and I do appreciate the amount of time that's being put into it, both on the perspective of the committee and for our planner. I too feel that public input, whether it's required or not, would be a public outreach, whatever we want to call it. I remember back in early 2010 or 12 or something like that, we had some issues on Route 9, primarily with home-based businesses, or not, and things being done up there that weren't by the book. But when we changed things, without really paying a lot of attention, we had an entire room full of people that were very upset when we came to a hearing. And I think that if we as a group, rather than have a joint meeting between the council and the planning board, I think we're much better off having a public gathering. Whoever comes, comes, and if the council wants to come in bits and pieces, that would be better too.
We could do that as a workshop associated with one of the planning
Yeah.
board meetings coming up.
You just make it
before long.
very
Sure.
public and
Yeah,
well known.
I agree. I think one of the best disinfectants there is light. So that transparency is huge, and especially when we're talking about land use and things like that. So I think it'd be a great thing to have it open.
Mr. Chair, would it be possible just to ask not everybody's on social media or actually read stuff, so I mean, if we actually could even hang information off doorknobs, for the event coming up, I
Yeah,
think
we can
would go.
coordinate on how to do the best outreach, whether
Yeah.
it's, I mean, I assume notification of the folks who are affected is going to be
Key.
the most important component of this, and making sure we reach them so they have a chance to tell us how they feel. So we'll work together on coordinating that.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the one other thing I wanted to mention, if we were going to go down this road, is that the planning board right now is also working on some changes that are going to be required to implement the new state law, LD 2003, about housing density. And there's a deadline to implement these by January 1st, 2024 for Lisbon. So I think if it sounds all right with everyone, we probably want to prioritize finishing up the work we need to do on that and getting that through the planning board so it can come to council so we can meet the deadline. And then maybe looking at a public meeting a little further down the road, which with the holiday season might be early 2024, if that doesn't sound too crazy.
Yeah, we can coordinate. Like I said, we have the mandate. We have to come get our ordinances up to snuff by January 1st. So,
And I believe in some of the mapping that you looked at too, and looking at this, there aren't that many parcel owners in ROS2 specifically, right?
No, we're not talking about.
Low number.
Yes.
So I think bringing that to their attention and trying to get attendance at a public session shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, I think, we're talking about big lot sizes, so not that many. Even though it's a very large land area, it's probably only a few hundred parcel owners total.
Yeah, it's important. I think we can't make mistakes here, and I think we got to make sure that we do this right. I'm one that believes, and I feel like keeping mistakes close, right? I actually told my wife she should keep her mistakes, keep your mistakes close. And when I said that, she came over and gave me a big hug. So I'm not sure I'm still kind of iffy about what that meant, but it's important that we do this right. So.
Yeah, I think we could set something up. We'll work with town staff to set up some kind of thing where we kind of have a public listening session and hear from people who live there, what their concerns are, what their needs are, and kind of make sure that what we've been developing is
Right.
what people actually want.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say also it's important to remember there's no water and sewer out there on Route 9. So, if your lots are too small, you're going to be drinking your neighbor's sewage. So we want to be very,
And
keep that in mind.
That's been a big point of focus during our discussions has been services, fire services, school pickup, water and sewer availability, all of those types of things. And if you look through the memo that was sent over, some of the proposals that Kate's, come up with and put in here about, whether it's maximum lot size or the amount of times that you can subdivide, I think we'll keep the numbers relatively low, but still help us address scenarios where, people get property left to them and brothers want to subdivide a property into two pieces and they can't because of zoning. And, it doesn't necessarily make sense because the lot's so large. And so those are the types of scenarios that we're trying to avoid and let people, use their property.
Right.
Okay, so I think the next steps then is potentially we'll get on the agenda for the next planning board meeting to discuss when we want to schedule having a public listening session. And then we'll follow up with council to see when we want to reconvene about that.
Very good.
I'm good?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll coordinate with town staff, and hopefully we can get it done sooner, but we do have to prioritize that January 1 deadline. So
Right.
thank you all very much.
Very good.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Next item.
Next item are public hearings. The first public hearing is a victualer's license for Tide to Table.
I'll open that public hearing. Anybody want to speak on the victuals license? Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing.
Next public hearing is an itinerant vendor license for Crystal Martin.
I'll open that public hearing. There being no discussion, I'll close that public hearing.
The next item is audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record. This portion of the agenda is solely to address items that are on today's agenda.
Anybody wish to speak to the agenda? There being none. Next item.
Next item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a counselor requests an item be removed. Any counselor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none. Order 2023-151 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants, $1,072,682.22. The municipal payroll warrants, $620,367.10. School accounts payable warrants, $633,848.84. School payroll warrants, $726,990.12. The minutes of July 11 and 26th, 2023. A victualer's license for Tide to Table and an itinerant vendor license for Crystal Martin. To set a public hearing for September 5th for itinerant vendor's license for Beach Betties, and to set public hearing for September 5th for victualers and itinerant vendor license for Bench Warmers and Manny's Philly to Me. Those are both food trucks.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Order pass, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Next item is Order 2023-152, funding request for public parking lot design on Warumbo property.
Good evening again. Ross Cunningham, Economic Community Development Director. As we all know that when we finalized a plan for the Warumbo waterfront, a portion of that was being supported by the Friends of Warumbo, and that is the green space. The parking lot side of that is ours to take care of and beautify. Working with the Lisbon Development Committee, we have come up with some ideas on that, and we went out and got bids from several different engineering firms to talk about what that parking lot should look like and how that should lay out. We're looking for a real showpiece that looks nice to represent our town down there and really welcome people to the community. The bid that the LDC appreciated the most was the one from Oliver Associates, our town engineer, which worked out really well. We like her. We like the relationship she has with the community. She has a couple variables in the bid, but if everything were to be used, it would total up just below $22,000. And so we are requesting that $22,000 be allocated from the downtown TIF to begin the process of designing a parking lot that is worthy of the space. I would like to say that this is a long-term project, and if we're not in it to win it at the end, which means coming back to you at some point asking for the money to actually execute the design, if we're not ready to do that, I would not want to spend the $22,000. I don't want to spend money on a design that's going to sit on a shelf. I want to finish a project that looks phenomenal. So my understanding on the downtown TIF right now is it's roughly $250,000, but the $50,000 that we allocated to the safety lighting has not been removed. So I believe it's really at about $200,000. This year's deposit to that fund was about $97,000. That'll happen again next year in July. Any questions for me?
Is there can we see the plan?
It's not a plan yet. This is an engine, I can certainly give you the bid. You're welcome to take a look. Here you go. It's a plan, her bid involves meeting with the LDC several times, coming up with design ideas, doing the engineering of the site, figuring out the layout, where the entrance is and exits are for the best parking, where the parking lots would be. We're hoping to have some green space down there, islands between parking rows, that kind of things. So this is to sit down and work through and come up with schematic designs and engineering designs for the parking lot. So this
Okay.
is the
Can
initial.
you email these to the council?
I'd be happy to.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for discussion.
Is there a second?
Approve it.
A second?
All in favor? So we're discussing, right? That wasn't a motion to.
That was a motion.
We should wait till after discussion to take a vote.
Okay.
All right.
Disregard the vote then.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to discuss?
I assumed people did want to discuss it.
Yes.
I know Fern and I were both at the LDC meeting, and it was thoroughly discussed there, all the several bidders, and the LDC drew the conclusion that that was probably the best bid to cover the situation and to get it done. Probably the person or the firm with the most intimate knowledge of what goes on in the town, and particularly down there. So that's what I know. Vern, you must have something to say.
It's not going to get done unless we do it. So I think at the end of the day, we need to have the engineering look at that area and find out the appropriate way to actually exit and enter. And there's a lot of different things that we'll talk about. I think, me personally, I want a very inviting parking lot that's functional and one that actually you can access the crosswalk correctly and safely, and that's not being done right now. It's actually, if you're in a wheelchair, it's a very dangerous place to try to get in across the street, and I'm hoping her professional skills and her ability to work at DOT is going to come up with a plan, and whether that's even the idea of having a parking lot that's raised a little bit so you have less of a ramp going up. I mean, proper drainage, there's a lot of different factors there. It may even require the idea of moving a fire hydrant to have better access to it, to the parking lot. I just want this, when we spend the money, I want to have a documentation that we can just go out to bid and it happens. Not the idea that we look at it and say, well, the person really didn't think this through. And not only have a plan, but also have the firm behind that actually can oversee it like they do all other projects to make sure it's done and done correctly and that it meets all the criteria it needs to be done. And I think the right people to do it is just, as Ross mentioned, we just got to be, I believe we have enough money with the money that we have put aside in downtown TIF, which is designed strictly to help the downtown, to get this project completed. And I am not wanting to spend money to put it on the shelf. And we have a lot of neat studies hanging out in Ross's office that cost us $20,000, $25,000 a whack to just sit there and collect dust. I'm only encouraged to do this if we can take that and make it happen when we're done.
But I was going to say, too, particularly we have, as everybody here knows, we've studied the Warumbo area a lot and drawn a lot of plans and pictures and concepts and all that stuff. It's time that we actually do something, and I think that was your point, too.
And the parking lot is actually in rough shape as we speak right now. I mean, Sunday we actually, the farmer's market moved up just because of all the rain we've had. If we've had any, right, we've had a little bit of rain. And I was out there at 6 o'clock in the morning because there was actually literally 4-inch puddles taking up half that parking lot that was not going to drain off because there's no place for it to go. So it's a very uninviting parking lot right now for people to park and go do our businesses. So we need to fix it.
Is all the hardtop gone?
The hardtop in the parking lot is gone. It's been reclaimed for a while.
So it's gone. There's no hardtop on there?
No.
But we still get big puddles?
Yes.
So there's no drainage? Do we know why? Is the soil just no good?
I
or?
think it was just, hey, it's covered now, let's put reclaim over it so we can park here. I don't think not to fault anybody, but I don't think anybody did any studies at that point. They were just trying to make it functional.
And during the winter, the winters we've been having, reclaim is great, but it's not great to plow on when it's half frozen. So, I mean, that parking lot actually gets a lot of salt from coming off of Canal Street. So when the town goes to plow it, it's very easy to be plowing hard and actually get into 3 inches deep of digging in the reclaim. Reclaim is not the best surface to plow on. The main winters we've been having that are snow and rain. So it's just over a period of time. I think it's weathered to the point where we need to do something. We just hate to keep putting money into it and not be right.
Yeah. I agree.
Any other questions for me?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, is there a vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Next item is Order 2023-153 to authorize the town manager to execute a quitclaim deed.
Is there a motion for discussion?
I'll make a motion for discussion.
Second.
So this is pretty straightforward. This is a tax-acquired property that we'll be quit claiming back to the property owner. They've paid all the back taxes and got the receipt for that this week. So just giving it back to the property owner.
That's good. Glad that worked out.
Yep.
Good for them.
Yeah, it's the one we talked about in executive session last month. So.
Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Order 2023-154, a charter amendment to change the elections for the school committee to June.
Is there a motion for discussion?
So move.
A second.
Who seconded?
I did.
Any discussion?
Is there anybody that can give just an overview of?
Sure.
So this is
Could I have your name?
I
and where you
apologize.
live,
Len
sir?
Lednam, school committee member. This is something that we have been talking about for a while. As a newer member, it's very tough coming into the committee when a lot of decisions that affect the school year that you're coming into have already been decided or talked about or worked through. So our retreat is in August. And then the way that the elections fall, you're elected in November, and then you're sworn in a few weeks later, and then you're kind of joining a committee that has long been in the process of that school year. So many other districts in our area, in our state, do their elections early in the spring for that exact reason. And I can speak for myself that, I personally feel that it would be a whole lot better and honestly serve the committee itself if you're not kind of thrown into, oh, wait a minute. At retreat, we have during the summer, we have a lot of time to just talk and get used to the idea of, okay, so this is how the processes work. You can really, but when you're thrown right into a meeting talking about things that happen 2 weeks before or 2 months before it can be a little hard to catch up with. So I appreciate the consideration of this action because I feel it would probably help us all out a lot better.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is there any requirements as far as on a charter or anything that requires?
I can help you with that because I've been working closely with Superintendent Green and the school committee to make sure that we covered all the bases on this for them. The one thing that will happen if we go ahead and change elections for school committee from November to June, those who are seated already will have additional months on their current seat so that we can then start the elections again in June. The charter amendments, our legal here for the town did the red line version of the charter, which was included in the packet. But basically, they just put the school budget validation referendum at the same time as the school committee elections. And Mr. Green gave me a memo that was added to the packet a little bit later, but it was yesterday morning. But his memo, let me get to the part. His memo really put it very succinctly. He said the school committee's been discussing changing the timeline for their annual elections as a result of feedback and research that's been received from members who've resigned and those who've been elected. And he reiterates the challenge that Mr. Lednam mentioned for newly elected committee members. When they come in November, they're joining the conversation well after the school budget's been approved and after students and staff have retired for the season. So they're not able to participate in the annual retreat, and that's where district goals, vision, focus are reviewed, revised, and implemented. So a lot of hard work and important work is done, but they miss out on that for on that part of it. He did do some additional research. The school committee was in touch with the executive director at the Maine School Management Association, which is the school version of the MMA, to determine when school districts hold their annual elections. And it turns out that over 83% of the school districts in Maine have their elections at the same time as they have their budget. As a result, their newly elected members are able to participate more effectively as members of that board. That's it in a nutshell, but our legal department did the red line because it's our charter that's affected. I thought they did a very concise and clear job of putting the language for the referendum for the school budget validation in line with the information everywhere there's a mention of elections for the school. So there are actually, I don't have that note right in front of me, but I think there are actually 4 or 5 different parts of the charter that are getting changed. And those are in the red line version is a big one, but I also included in the packet a short version that only has the sections in it that are pertinent, and that's, you don't even have to have a color printer for that one because it uses underlines and crossouts. So puts it in a nutshell for us. So the superintendent actually started talking with my office about the process, I'm going to say nearly a year ago, so that we could make sure we put a timeline in place for them and let them know what it would entail in terms of the town. So I think I covered everything, but what did I miss?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to this. I'm just thinking that the dynamics of the vote by the citizens is going to change. Traditionally, the more folks show up for the November election than do the June election. On the other hand, perhaps more people will show up to vote on the school budget if we do the school board members in June. And there may be more interest in the election of the June school board members.
Is there any additional cost that's going to be incurred by moving this to June to the town?
No, actually, so the school budget, the school committee, the school department always shares the cost of the election when they're involved. So whether it's the school budget validation referendum or it's elections, they always share the cost. So they'll basically, unless the town has something on the June election, at the June election, the school will basically pay for that election, which they, like this year they basically did. Yeah, so whoever's on that, on the ballot, so whether it's the school, the town, or the water department, they share the cost of the election so that that whole cost isn't borne solely by the town. Short answer, no.
Okay, I have a question on this. So this is a charter amendment, right? So we're going to have to put this on the ballot for November. Is that correct?
That's right. I have the ballot language. I included in the packet. I also put a copy of it on your signature table. But the question will also, it usually says yes or no, but we always put whether the town council recommends yes or no. So you can vote on that tonight, or you can choose to move that portion of a vote to a different night.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Just for curiosity, the last election, what was the percentage of people that still wanted to continue the June vote for the budget? Is it still overwhelming? Or
it was a clear majority.
Okay.
There was,
So that's not going to go away anytime soon?
it's not. So I think a lot of people don't realize that once every 3 years, we not only vote on the school budget, we vote on whether we think it's too high or too low, but every 3 years we also vote on whether we want to continue to vote on it. And this town it's never been close. It's always a clear majority of those voting want to continue to vote.
If they're doing the time to vote, odds are they're the same people that want to do it. So, right? So continue it on.
And there could be some additional advantages, like Councillor Fellows pointed out, where might get higher numbers to vote if there are people to vote for in addition to a referendum, so a budget. So.
Anything else? All in favor?
Oh, I'm so sorry. This has to be a roll call vote.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Kane?
Yes.
Councillor Fellows?
Yes.
Councillor Keller?
Yes.
Councillor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Councillor Lunt?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Aye.
Councillor Robichaud?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed 7-0. Would the council want to consider accepting the wording of the referendum, or would you prefer to wait to the next meeting?
I have no problem.
I'd say accept the way it's written.
Accepting it the way it's written.
All right. This does not have to be a roll call vote. So who's making the motion?
I'll make the motion to accept it as it's written.
And a second?
I'll second it. All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. Thank you.
Next item.
The next item is Order 2023-155, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of bonds for Borough Road Bridge project. This is a first reading and will require a roll call vote.
Is there a motion for discussion?
Make a motion for discussion.
A second.
Okay, so, Glenn?
So basically we have a timeline that we need to meet if we want to get this on the November ballot. So this is the authorizing ordinance and language for the ballot question to do the Borough Road Bridge replacement. The amount of $650,000, we can't assume we're going to get the federal money to replace the bridge. So in the event that we don't get through the CDS process, this amount will provide enough funding to do the replacement, next summer if we don't get the $1 million.
What if the town doesn't approve it?
That's an interesting question.
We have a temporary bridge.
We have a temporary bridge that goes away at the end of August next year. I know.
Does that leave us with legal liabilities?
That's a question we've been evaluating, so I think that we get it on the ballot, and discontinuance was an option that we've been exploring. I don't know how viable it is. I think the DOT can step in and stop that process if they want to, based on the way the statute reads, but if we want to do this project, we do need to get it on the ballot for November, so there's still a lot of time between now and then and figure out how we do this, but yeah, if it gets voted down, then we have to figure out what we do next.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah.
So the 650 is basically just to reconstruct what was there, no better, no worse. Basically the same bridge that would flood over every year, every time there's high water, right?
Correct.
To actually rebuild it better would be probably more towards that $1 million figure. Has there been any thought to actually have some public input from just landowners, Lisbon taxpayers that live on the road, to actually just kind of get their views of what's best, what's not? I'd hate to actually if we get $1 million bond, grant, right, or approval, we may actually be able to do more for bridge than what we're actually voting for, right? That 650.
Right, and that's what staff and the engineering firm prior to my coming here recommended as far as a replacement, that it would be wider, it would be taller. And I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't speak to the technical component of the plan, and also to meet the Atlantic Salmon Federation requirements there too. But also you could do a replacement that's not ideal, and that's what this would fund.
My recommendation would be is to actually go out for bond for the same amount as what we potentially could get for a grant, and then we always can build a smaller bridge. Just because we go out for a higher bond doesn't mean that we can't have the meetings and decide to actually do less of a project, right? But we can't do more if we don't have the money, right? So if it comes in at 750 or 800 to even replace what we need to, it's still going to be, even though it's approved, we wouldn't have the funding to make anything beyond that. And I'm not one to spend money that unnecessarily, but I wouldn't want to tie our hands either if it ended up being a little bit more of a project, because I know those other ideas are the thoughts. So that's just a recommendation. Like I say, I believe even if we go out for a $2 million bond,
Yeah, you
if
don't
we
have
only
to
spend,
authorize the full amount.
yeah, we could.
I just wanted it to have enough options so that, assuming we got the funding and we get the match, we would be able to appropriate the full amount. But if we didn't, or the voters didn't want to take on the full amount of the bond, but that's up to you all tonight. If you want to change the dollar figure and appropriate the full amount, then we can authorize to go to general obligation bond if we don't get the grant.
Just a recommendation. I don't know. Have we got a fairly firm number what it would cost to replace what was just there? Is that 650 adequate to do that, or?
Probably could do it for a little less, but this is a safe number, assuming costs don't keep rising. And once we get past the election, then the design work will start, and then we'll go out to bid in the spring and start construction in the summer. So
I'm all good with the 650 if everybody's all set. It was just, I know that there's been a discussion about the idea whether we rebuilt it to be what it is right now, or actually rebuilt it to be a little bit longer lasting, a little bit higher.
then I would recommend that we change the 650 to the $1 million figure, and if that's what you want to do. And then if we don't get the CDS money, we could bond for the full amount.
Personally, I prefer the 650, and I think if our neighbor town wants to kick in the extra 400,000, considering it's almost entirely their residents that don't pay taxes here, I'm not sure we want to go on the, force Lisbon taxpayers to pay any more than necessary for a bunch of people who don't pay taxes here.
Now, that bridge is nothing but a culvert and a road over a big culvert, if you go look at it. So is that something that our director for Public Works, he's pretty talented. Is that something he can just go do?
That is a question. I cannot speak for Randy, but I think the structural engineers and the design work that'll all have to be done.
Yeah, but the work putting in an oversized culvert that's there today, just go a little bigger culvert and then tar over it. Once the engineers give you how to design it and make it safe, I think that would save.
We can have Randy back and talk about the labor. This is just authorizing the bond, so.
He did the box culvert in gross development. I'm not sure how much different that is than this bridge.
Exactly. I just think it's something to look at, right? And
we have plenty of time.
Plenty of time, and down the road, if it could end up saving the town a couple $100,000 if we did most of it ourselves.
But I think we need to
I would still go
guarantee the funding for the worst case situation.
Yeah.
So, the 650 number, or do
I'm
you
all
want
set with
to
that
change
if we
the
think we
number?
can.
I prefer the 650. I think that gets them a minimum bridge. It'll get them across there, and they can.
Has
if they want more, they can talk to their selectmen.
That's what is in the motion. Is that right?
Yeah, I personally think that ship has sailed. We
Been there.
have been to their
They had no interest when we went.
I don't know if that door is closed for good, but it would be nice if the neighboring town would. Although they didn't seem too interested in sharing the cost, even though most of the people on Borough Road are in Bowden and not in Lisbon. They do have to build their own temporary bridge right now because of another road that washed out, so.
I think it is important just to, if people are listening, that the temporary bridge we put in was a $100,000 figure, and after this next year, we start renting that by the month, which is going to be
Over 40, right, a month?
It's
4,000.
4,000.
4,000 a
But
month?
with all of the washouts and the demand for temporary bridges, I've heard other communities are paying double what we're paying and paying basically the same amount for 6 months. So who knows at the end of that agreement that Wyman and Simpson doesn't say, well, now it's, you know.
Is that in the agreement prior, that the rental fee after, wasn't that in the original agreement that we had?
Yeah, but it was a 12-month agreement we signed, so I don't know if we'll end up having to renegotiate that at the end of the 12 months if it goes longer. Or...
The hope is that we can just get it taken care of and be done with it.
Yeah, I think either way, politically, we're stuck with it, and we're gonna have to fix it and get it operational again, even though it's 70% Bowden, 30% Lisbon using it. I think we're beyond that, and we gotta get it done.
But I also agree with Councilor Robichaud that it would be worth having, I think it would be worth having Public Works look at it. Because I recall on Ferry Road, they had a really big washout on Ferry Road one time, and they came in and put a new. And the problem, I think, with something like that is that there's a business in Bowden that is a heavy construction business, and I think that may create an issue with the weight limit. Maybe I'm not sure what the weight limits are when they
It's
build
22
something
now,
like
but
that.
I think afterwards it opens it back over 30 again, right?
Yeah, it was posted because it was unlacing.
Right.
There wasn't a weight restriction prior to the damage from the May 2nd storm, so a direct replacement
Would be fine.
I would assume is not going to be a posted
Right.
weight.
I mean, I'm fine building a bridge that serves the people on the other side of the brook.
I think one of the biggest
But
concerns
not necessarily ramping it up so one person over there that has a construction business that moves heavy equipment and stone and all the stuff that he moves is, we shouldn't have to build a bridge to his specifications is what I'm trying to say.
But I think you're going to find our fire equipment probably is one of the heavier components that goes over the
Right,
bridge.
yeah, I mean, as long as it's good for fire and ambulance and.
And fuel deliveries, school
Right,
buses.
right.
I'm sure the state has minimum requirements that you have to meet.
That's a question for an engineer. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't have the answer to that one.
Are we ready to vote?
This is a roll call. Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes?
Counselor Keller?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Aye.
Counselor Robichaud?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed, vote 7-0.
We can have, Mayor, Chair, we can have a little bit of a informational campaign prior to the election, just so people are aware what the requirements are and the ongoing costs if we don't.
Yeah, and I'll talk with council too about what that looks like. I in my previous forms of government, we only ever had to go do a referendum if a council bond ordinance, there was a petition against it to overturn it. So I never had to do it as a first measure. So I'll work with folks who've done those before to make sure we have an adequate information campaign and put the stuff out. So
Good, thank you.
Next item?
So the next thing I would ask is if you would like to approve the language for the bond question. Is this the right one?
yeah, it's at the bottom.
This is
of
the
that.
one, yep.
I closed the document if you have it.
That's
Yeah.
okay. So this is the one that will go to the ballot. So the ballot question, if the council would like to approve recommending a yes vote to the public, I'll need a motion and a second and a vote.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
7-0. Thank you. Next item is Order 2023-156 to approve the election warrant for November 7th, 2023. This is to set elections for November 7th, 2023. The following offices will be determined: Counselor at Large, 1 3-year term; School Committee, 1 3-year term and 1 2-year term; and Water Commission, 1 3-year term, along with the following referendum questions to be determined. Question 1, shall the municipality approve the charter amendment summarized below? Summary: this amendment to the Lisbon Town Charter would modify Article 4, Sections 4.01, 4.04, and 4.05, Article 6, Section 6.04, Article 7, Section 7.01, and Article 9, Section 9.01, to provide that elections for school committee members and the school department budget validation referendum shall occur annually on the second Tuesday of June. The bond order question 2 is, shall an ordinance entitled Ordinance Authorizing the Issuance of up to $650,000 in general obligation bonds and notes of the town of Lisbon, Maine, be approved and ratified? So the motion will be to approve the election warrant. This is the information that will go on the official warrant for the election for the public. It'll be posted, and this is according to election law.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Next item is other business, council committee reports.
School Committee.
The school committee has had a couple special meetings to fill some staffing appointments since our last meeting.
Nice. Planning Board.
You've heard most of what's going on there. There's a large discussion now about the changes in ROS 1 and the Rural Open Space 1 and Rural Open Space 2, as well as discussion on the deadlines for acting on LD 2003, which concerns accessory dwelling units.
Okay. Lisbon Development Committee.
I wasn't able to make the last meeting, but I don't know if Ross has anything that he wants to bring forward there.
Sure. We are actively working on both the parking lot and trying to get a scheduled time to go out and look at the lot down by the old landfill to talk about that. Also working with the town manager and codes to address some of the abandoned properties. And then our next meeting will, of course, be on the 13th of September. Right here. Thank you.
Is there any other liaison on LDC or just Mark?
You guys are on there.
We both serve on the committee.
Is there any other who on it? Landowner?
No.
Liaison from the council.
No.
Certainly, if you guys have some to report, go right ahead.
I think Ross pretty summed it up.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission, there hasn't been a meeting. The next meeting is set for September. County Budget Committee, the next meeting is set, the first, I think, budget meeting is set for the 23rd, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, the 23rd at 5:30.
Did you want to do the Recreation Committee too?
I can actually jump in on that. There's no.
Oh,
new
did I
information,
skip
so
it? Sorry. My eyes
okay.
are-
I have no
glazed over
information to add,
from-
so it's all good.
Parks and Recreation?
Like I say, I haven't attended meetings
Okay.
since July, so the summer it gets a little bit quiet, so I have no new information.
Library Governing Board?
The library is in the process of finalizing summer reading program, and the response this year has been record-setting, so very, very good response both from the kids and from the adults reading. We're looking at September library card drive, which involves people getting new library cards, getting their photos taken with their library cards, and encouraging others to do the same. And there's a story walk proposal, which is interesting, involving different stories that you can put on post, and as you walk along the trail, you read the story to your child, which is interesting. And another thing the library is doing is ensuring that they're meeting the needs of the community. So anyone that has ideas, suggestions, or concerns, please voice them. And that would be that.
Thank you. Water Commission?
Nothing real new, except that the chlorination program is well underway. They're still doing the chlorination first and the
Corrosion.
yeah, that corrosion is following that. So it'll probably loosen some things that were never loose before, but so they'll address it as it happens.
Thanks. Finance Committee?
And we haven't met, as we know, we're struggling to get enough people to get on the committee, so looking to fill the spots.
Next item?
Yes, town manager's report.
So at the last meeting, the chief of police was here, and we talked a little bit about some speeding issues on River Road. There was a memo in the packet, if you had a chance to review. But just in summary, they did an investigation. 1,455 vehicles were detected. There was one high speed of 58 miles an hour. Police chief is recommending at this time to not add stop signs, but he went out and talked to residents and warned the public that it is a three-way intersection, and that there will be a three-way intersection road sign added and another sign that states "look both ways." There's an attachment of what that looks like, but that is the conclusion of his looking into the speeding on River Road. A couple other items. The demolition of 6 Union Street. Would have liked for it to start sooner, but it will begin on August 28th, and I am requesting a road closure for that portion on the 28th near the house from 7 to 9 a.m. so they can drop the excavator off. Another closure on the 30th from 7 to 15:30. I'm not good with military time. 3:30.
Just
Loading.
subtract 12 from it.
There you go. Loading out the demo and debris, and then a full day closure on the 31st to clean the material. And then I have one more road closure to request from Positive Change Lisbon. Let me pull up, Len, your email from earlier. Oh, you have it there?
To
Do you wanna just
authorize,
read it?
to authorize the closure of South Street between Addison and Main on August 26th from 1 to 3 p.m. for a Positive Change Lisbon fundraiser contingent on the reimbursement of staff costs.
I believe they'll have to vote on that, right?
I think you will have to vote on that one.
So that's on South Street? Is that what you said?
Yep, up
House
next to
between
Sippy Cup.
Addison and Maine.
Sippy Cup. Sippy Cup.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion for discussion if needed.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion is for all the road closures, or just the?
Yeah, so it would
Last
be Union Street on the 28th. Let me pull the times back up. Between 7 and 9, and only a portion of it, not the full street. The 30th from 7 to 3:30, and the 31st, potentially a full day. They're hoping 7 to 12, so we'll just say a full day. Hopefully they're out of there by noon. And then for 3 hours, 1 to 3, South Street between Addison and Maine.
That's on August 26th.
How's that? If the businesses along there are obviously going to be impacted, I would imagine. Are they well aware of that
Businesses along
potential?
the Union Street one?
Yeah.
Well, it'll just be that corner. Like, I don't think they're going to need the full was that Booker,
Okay.
Booker Street? Yeah, Booker Street, I'm sorry. Not Union Street. So it'll just be the area where they'll be doing the demo, and they'll just have to go around.
Okay.
All in favor?
Order pass, vote 7-0.
So as you know, the temporary bridge at Potter Brook was completed last week with no delays. I'm very excited that that is behind us. And then I have a note here. I don't know if there was a question on 71 Gould Road at the last meeting, but that was a problem property that was identified, and we've given an extension on a consent agreement through the 21st. If we don't reach an agreement, we'll move forward with a land use enforcement action and come to council to move forward with that. And that is all I've got.
All right, the next item is the statutory quarterly finance report.
Do they have to make a motion to discuss, or should I just?
Nope, it's just,
just
this
a
is other
report?
business, just a report, just to make sure that everybody had a chance to look over the report, see if anyone had any questions about it.
Yeah, so the charter requires this report. We've resumed providing it, so it has been provided. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's the 136 pages.
Do we need a vote to accept it?
No, it's just a report.
Okay.
Mhm.
Next item.
Okay, we already covered the proposed zoning changes. So the next item are appointments. So the first appointment, hang on, because they're in a different order. Okay, the first appointment is for the ethics panel this will be order 2023-157 to appoint Clyde Cavender to the ethics panel.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. The next item is order 2023-158 to accept the resignation of Dan Lehman as an associate member of the planning board and to then appoint him as a regular member to the planning board until 2025.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. The next item is order 2023-159 to appoint Natalie Thompson to the planning board. She is already on the LDC. We use the same application. So 2023-159 to appoint her to the planning board.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. Just to clarify, this is as an associate member of the planning board. Order 2023-160 to appoint Shay McGeehee, if I said that right, to the Lisbon Development Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. And we have order 2023-161 to appoint Sam Prindle to the Finance Committee.
I'll make that motion also.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
It's getting routine
Order
here.
passed, vote 7-0. Next item is an appointment to the Recreation Committee. Will the council be making that appointment this evening? We had one applicant who was unable to come to your executive session, but she did submit a little bit more extensive explanation on her application. She's also, I'm sorry to interrupt, she's also highly recommended by Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Chair, may I make a recommendation?
Yes.
I would recommend, we actually had two people who were interested in the Recreation Committee, and make a recommendation that they both actually visit or attend a couple meetings of the Recreation Committee to make sure that they actually are fully interested in it, and from there we would actually probably entertain their appointments. That's just a recommendation.
I'll second it.
I move to,
Is that
I move to accept Fern's recommendation.
Is that a motion?
No, you don't have to make a motion. We can just not
Yeah, well, let's...
appoint anyone, and we can make that
Yeah, we'll
recommendation.
postpone voting on that until they attend a couple of the meetings and reaffirmed that that's what they
I
wanted.
get,
Okay.
I just would recommend to the town manager follow up to let them know our thoughts.
I got you. Usually we'll meet with the department heads following these, but I'll follow up with Mark.
Okay.
All right. And the next item is Order 2023-163 to appoint Lisa Ward as Emergency Management
I'll make
Director.
that motion.
I'll second.
I don't know, have we met this person?
Who?
You have met her.
Who?
Do we know her?
I'll advocate for her.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Good news is we have a hazard mitigation plan meeting next week.
Yes.
Full day.
Next item.
Next item is Councilor Communications.
I have something. I just wanted to give you a little background information about the artwork that's going on the Extension Office. A number of years ago, I was talking to someone and said, wouldn't it be nice if we had some way to tell people what goes on in that office? And people accepted that idea, and then COVID hit. So we are finally getting the first mural put up, which is called Grow. So it has to do with master gardening and the food education that they do and gleaning program. The next mural will be called Learn, and that will, they're working on that as we speak, but it's not ready. And Learn has to do with 4-H, public speaking, all the programs that the Extension Office supports for kids and adults and teenagers as well. So it's hopefully going to be a little bit easier to identify what goes on in the Extension Office, although it will never be as simple as the hairdresser down the street or the insurance office across the street. So that's just a little background.
Thank you.
And I have something, Mr. Chair. Last Friday, you and I met with Amy Weirs and Kathy Malloy and David Malloy, her husband, to discuss property taxes. The goal of the meeting was to become a little deeper in understanding on exactly how our situation and the other local situations in towns are going with taxes. So I, for one, appreciate their in-depth knowledge and what they could impart on us. And I particularly was interested in hearing about the coefficient of dispersion. So if anybody wants to know what that is, don't ask me.
It's pretty important to me. The coefficient of dispersion is near and dear to my heart. So.
After the meeting, did you think you were doing things fairly?
I did. It appears that there's only so many things you can do. You do have to meet the law, you do have to keep up with what the state requires, and you do have to reassess things as required. Our values that we have assessed property in the past are low, just like other towns around here, because of the increase in the real estate value. And so that has an impact, and that causes reevaluation, which is not raising any more money, it's just redistributing it. So, yeah, we learned a lot, and I think if we have questions going forward next week or two, I think we can fairly intelligently answer them.
I think the bottom line was that is our taxes went up because our budget went up.
That's true.
That's the bottom line.
Expenses go up.
We tried to do what we could by dropping a mill, but certainly not enough to stop the taxes from being raised or stopping the budget from increasing. So that was the bottom line. That's what I got out of the whole coefficient of dispersion thing. It still came down to our budget went up, so our taxes went up.
And if you read the paper, you can see the same thing more dramatically in Brunswick, and you can see it.
Yeah,
it's
everywhere.
also in Bath.
So.
So, yeah.
Anybody else? The gateway to Lisbon, coming east from Lewiston, there's a sort of a defunct business there on the left with a number of cars. It's kind of an eyesore.
There's a large discussion in our last LDC meeting.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think this,
was it? Okay.
this one made it to the list, right?
I could just update you briefly on that property. It's
Please.
actually owned by Poland Spring Auto. Poland Auto. I spoke to the owner a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago, and he is interested in pursuing demolition of that building and cleaning up the lot. And now interested in pursuing and actually following through and pursuing is a whole other conversation. But we've had conversations. He knows that we'd like to see it cleaned up. He's interested in finding out what it would take to tear the building down and put something decent up there and sell cars. So we'll work on the zoning and whether that's authorized and whether that's been.
Because technically he's got a junkyard there
Yes.
now.
Yeah, he does.
Yes.
And we know.
And we need a fence.
The
if
codes
he's gonna-
officer has spoken to him, and we're working through that.
Yeah, but it's not even a fence, it's the idea it just needs to be removed, I mean, because it goes against code. And just to add to that, I mean, one of the things that it was a really good meeting. Glenn was able to attend our last meeting in the LDC, and I think that part of the large discussion was our gateway, not just our gateway, but all the way throughway to the other side of some of the buildings and some of the areas that just need to be attended to. And I think Glenn is actually going to be working with staff and actually coming up with a plan on how to maintain it and keep it and let everybody know that we mean business and things are going to get taken care of.
Good.
So we'll see how that plays out, but I do appreciate Glenn being at that meeting and listening to our concerns and hopefully getting some action.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Next item?
Audience participation and response for new items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern to address items or issues that are not on the agenda. Please speak clearly into the microphone and state your name for the record.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to the council?
I'll just add one thing. I forgot my town manager's report. Since we only have one meeting this month and we won't meet again until September, the room upgrades will likely begin in here, so we won't have as many issues with the microphones and
Nice.
hearing folks and the folks listening at home. So met with the project manager, with Lisa, was that a week or two ago now?
Last week, I think.
Yeah, so we're just getting the design worked out, and hopefully the room upgrades be completed by your next meeting in September, and we won't have to worry
No,
about
what about wireless mics on our
So
lapels?
we can go into the weeds on what it's going to look like, but you won't have to worry about microphones after the room upgrades are done. So
No more microphones.
And those things in your ears, you know?
you won't have to worry about it.
Your dreams.
Anything else?
Earworms.
Yeah, do you want to make that announcement?
Sure. So Glenn's going to let me make this announcement. We have made an offer to, and it's been accepted, a person for the deputy clerk's position. Our deputy clerk is finished at the end of this month, and she's done a great job sort of paving the way and getting things ready for the new deputy. We were fortunate to find someone who's experienced, not long-term, but a lot of customer service experience and some solid experience, and she really impressed both the deputy and I, along with HR, did the interview, and she impressed all of us. So
Good.
we're looking forward to having another strong person in the office. So it'll be great.
Nice.
I'll also add hats off to council, because I think the work you did over the last 2 years with your wage adjustments is what's attracting a lot of this talent and folks that are serving in the same capacity in other towns. So
Yep, we
bad
stole
news
her.
for Green, good
Yeah.
news for us.
Yes, right. That's true.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I was determined not to make.
Order passed, vote
No?
7-0.
We're adjourned.
Harry, could you do that again? I hear it.
I can still hear out of one ear, so.
We might have to consider taking that gavel again and hiding it.
Did you see me when I sat down? I started sweating right away. I'm like, where is it? I'm like, where is it?